Some people call this the polite bankruptcy of later life. Not because money is missing, because something else is. Time, attention, nerve, quiet. The strength to sit with your own thoughts and still recognize yourself. And here is the strange part. Most people do not notice the theft while it is happening. They call it friendship, duty, being nice, staying connected, keeping the peace, being available, being a good person. But look carefully, and the ledger tells another story. A conversation you did not want, an invitation you accepted from guilt, a phone call that leaves you heavier than before, a room full of people, and somehow you return home with less life in you than when you arrived. That is not social warmth. That is extraction. And no, this does not mean you have become cold. It does not mean you hate people. It does not mean old age has made you bitter. Actually, no. Let me say that properly. It may mean you have finally learned the cost of access. When we are young, time behaves like a generous empire, vast, expandable, almost careless in its abundance. We spend it as though another shipment will arrive tomorrow. We say yes too quickly. We sit through pointless dinners. We entertain gossip. We tolerate manipulation. We carry obligations that were never truly ours. And because the future still looks enormous, we imagine nothing is being lost. But history teaches a harsher lesson. Every empire believes its resources are endless, right until the moment the treasury echoes. Human life is no different. At some point, quietly, the math changes. You wake one morning and understand that an afternoon is not a small thing. A peaceful evening is not a small thing. A quiet Sunday, unbroken by performance, is not a small thing. It is capital. And once you see time as capital, many relationships begin to look less like companionship and more like recurring withdrawals. This is the part nobody says out loud. The world does not merely ask for your presence. It often demands your emotional subsidy. It asks you to listen without limit, to reassure without rest, to forgive without repair, to attend without joy, to remain reachable, pleasing, agreeable, explainable, available. And when you hesitate, it presents you with a moral accusation. What happened to you? Why are you so distant? Why do you never come around anymore? Why are you so hard to reach? But the real question is different. Why was your exhaustion considered acceptable, so long as everyone else remained comfortable? That question changes everything, because once you ask it honestly, you begin to notice a pattern. Some people do not miss you. They miss access to you. They miss your listening ear, your calming effect, your reliability, your ability to absorb their chaos without billing them for the cost. In commerce, we would call that an unpriced asset. In life, we call it being a good person. And yes, there is kindness in being there for others. Deep kindness, civilizational kindness. No society survives without mutual care. I do not mock that. But wisdom begins when care is separated from consumption. Not every bond is mutual. Not every history is sacred. Not every familiar face deserves permanent entry into the inner chambers of your life. Rome understood this better than we do. The household had thresholds. The forum had thresholds. The Senate had thresholds. Access meant something. Proximity meant something. Not every voice entered every room. Boundaries were not cruelty. They were architecture. Modern life, by contrast, treats open access as virtue. Instant replies, endless updates, permanent availability, constant emotional transparency. If you withdraw, even slightly, the culture suspects offense. If you protect your peace, it suspects vanity. If you choose silence, it suspects hostility. Yet silence is often not hostility. It is repair. Look, this becomes clearer with age, because age strips illusion. You begin to understand that many interactions are not nourishing at all. They are maintenance, performance, ritual without soul, obligation without reciprocity, noise disguised as intimacy. You notice how certain conversations repeat themselves for years. The same grievance, the same complaint, the same excuse, the same crisis, lovingly preserved like an heirloom. And you begin to ask a forbidden question. If this person has been drowning in the same inch of water for 20 years, am I helping them by standing there with a towel, or merely joining the ceremony? That question is not unkind. It is adult. Meet Thomas, 68. Retired from full-time work, though not from responsibility. He has a decent home, reasonable health, grown children, a diary that should, in theory, belong more to him now than at any previous stage of life. But it does not. His week is full. Lunch with people he no longer trusts. Phone calls that begin with just 5 minutes and end an hour later. Family obligations that arrive dressed as emergencies, though they are really habits. Neighbors who do not seek companionship, only audience. Old friends who want the comfort of history, but not the effort of presence. By Friday, Thomas is not enriched. He is spent. And if you ask him what happened, he struggles to explain it, because nothing dramatic occurred. No theft, no scandal, no betrayal in plain sight. Only leakage. That is how extraction works when it becomes socially acceptable. It never looks violent. It looks normal. Now place beside him Margaret, 72, widowed, once the center of every gathering, the reliable one, the diplomatic one, the one who remembered birthdays, smoothed tensions, hosted holidays, made everyone feel included. She now spends more time alone. Some relatives whisper that she has changed. Yes, she has. She has stopped donating her peace to people who never noticed the cost. Margaret still loves deeply, but she has become selective. She no longer says yes from reflex. She no longer attends every gathering merely to prove goodwill. She no longer opens the door to those who arrive carrying only appetite. And do you know what she discovered? Her life became smaller in surface area, but richer in depth. That is the paradox. Fewer people, more reality. Modern culture fears this lesson because it offends the arithmetic of popularity. We are taught to measure social health by quantity. More invitations, more interactions, more activity, more chatter, more digital traces proving we are still in circulation. But quantity is the logic of markets, not the logic of meaning. A warehouse is full, a cathedral is not. Yet only one of them lifts the human spirit. And that brings us to trust. Trust is strange in youth. It tends to flow outward easily, like water from a high spring. We assume honesty until given reason otherwise. We expect continuity. We imagine goodwill where there may only be convenience. Later, experience intervenes. Someone speaks warmly in your presence and cheaply in your absence. Someone borrows not money, but emotional energy, and never returns it. Someone appears in need, but only when they need. Someone treats your steadiness as infrastructure, not as gift. After enough of this, trust changes shape. This is where many people are judged unfairly. They are called guarded, closed, difficult, cynical. But caution is not cynicism. A castle that closes its gates at night is not paranoid. It is civilized. Age does not always make people suspicious. Often, it makes them accurate. You begin to notice what your younger self ignored. Tone, timing, patterns. The mismatch between words and consequences. The subtle contempt hidden inside jokes. The entitlement hidden inside familiarity. The manipulative urgency hidden inside casual requests. And because you notice, you withdraw faster. Not from humanity as a whole, from repetition. That distinction matters. There is also a deeper wound beneath all this, and many never name it. Repeated disappointment changes not only how you see others, it changes how expensive openness begins to feel. To trust someone is to make an advance payment with no guarantee of return. In youth, we make those payments freely. Later, after loss, betrayal, or simple fatigue, we become more careful with the currency. That is not meanness. That is treasury management of the soul. And then there is the world itself, which has become louder than the human nervous system was designed to bear. Everywhere, interruption, screens, alerts, performances, opinions, artificial urgency, manufactured outrage, the endless theater of relevance. A civilization terrified of silence because silence invites self-knowledge, and self-knowledge disrupts consumption. Once, conversation had weight. A visit meant something. A letter meant something. A pause meant something. Presence had texture. Attention was not fragmented into glowing rectangles and half-heard replies. Now, a great deal of contact is contact in name only. We message without meeting, react without listening, update without revealing, perform intimacy without surrendering any actual interior life. And somehow we are surprised that so many people feel unseen, because visibility is not the same as presence. A video call can convey a face. It cannot always convey a soul. A feed can announce a life. It cannot necessarily share one. Constant connection has created a peculiar famine, never more reachable, never more nourished. So some people step back. They leave the group chat unanswered. They decline the crowded lunch. They stop narrating their every thought to the public square. They let silence return. They rediscover the ancient pleasure of an unobserved hour. The world interprets this as retreat. Often it is recovery. Here I must draw a line with care. Solitude and loneliness are not twins. They only resemble each other from a distance. Loneliness is hunger without bread. It is the pain of disconnection, the ache of being unseen where you long to be known. It can be brutal. No wise person romanticizes it. Solitude is different. Solitude is chosen space, a room with the door closed and the spirit finally able to sit down, a walk with no performance, a morning without emotional taxation. A life in which your thoughts are allowed to finish before someone interrupts them. One wounds, the other restores. And many older people discover, with some embarrassment at first, that what they had feared as loneliness was actually relief. Relief from explanation, relief from obligation, relief from social weather, relief from being perpetually cast in a role others wrote for them decades ago. The peacemaker, the helper, the strong one, the patient one, the available one, the one who never makes things difficult. But eventually, a person tires of being convenient. That exhaustion is sacred. It means the false arrangement can no longer continue. Listen, there comes a season when self-abandonment no longer feels noble. It feels vulgar. You see too clearly what it costs. You feel the depletion in your body, the heaviness after certain visits, the thin irritation after certain calls, the strange grief of leaving an interaction in which you were physically present, yet spiritually absent. And you begin to think, perhaps for the first time with complete honesty, I do not want this anymore. Not the shouting kind of rejection, not drama, not revenge, something quieter. Selection. This is why many people say they avoid others now. Not because they have lost the capacity for love, but because they have lost the appetite for counterfeit closeness. They no longer want to be there for everyone, while no one is truly there for them. They no longer wish to host the chaos of chronic complainers. They no longer volunteer as unpaid therapists for people devoted to their own confusion. They no longer absorb the anxiety of those who mistake panic for personality. They no longer keep company with the perpetually offended, the casually cruel, the endlessly needy, the expertly manipulative. And yes, some will call this harsh. So be it. Every civilization eventually learns that tolerance without standards becomes surrender. Personal life obeys the same law. If you permit every influence entry, you do not become compassionate. You become occupied. Now, before this hardens into dogma, let me add something important. The goal is not sterile isolation. The goal is not to turn human beings into sealed vaults. That would be another distortion, another poverty. The goal is quality. One honest conversation over 10 performative ones. One reliable friend over a room of opportunists. One afternoon in peace over a calendar packed with obligations you secretly resent. One relationship where truth can breathe over a dozen where everyone must remain politely false. This is not social failure, it is refinement. And when people of a certain age speak with one another, a curious recognition often appears. They realize this is not merely a private eccentricity, it is a pattern. A season many enter after decades of contact, disappointment, duty, adaptation, and emotional labor. They compare notes. They admit they no longer enjoy large gatherings. They confess they protect their mornings. They say they trust slowly now. They say they prefer a few good souls. They say noise tires them faster than it once did. And then, with visible relief, they realize they are not broken. They are arriving at an age where performance loses prestige, arriving at a stage where approval is too expensive, arriving at the late wisdom that not every relationship deserves lifelong maintenance merely because it once existed. History offers comfort here. The final chapters of life were not always imagined as a frantic extension of social competition. In older traditions, age was meant to narrow the field and deepen the gaze. Less spectacle, more essence. Less audience, more truth. We have forgotten that. We try to keep everyone socially active, constantly networked, permanently engaged, as though human worth depends on visible participation. It does not. A quiet life can be a magnificent life. A small circle can be a noble circle. A guarded gate can protect a generous heart. So what then is the exit from this trap? It begins with accounting. Not financial accounting, though the logic is similar. Moral accounting. Emotional accounting. Temporal accounting. For 1 week, observe yourself carefully. After each interaction, ask only this: did this bring clarity, warmth, laughter, truth, or renewal? Or did it leave confusion, heaviness, irritation, fatigue, and the dull sense that I had abandoned myself again? Do not judge too quickly. Just record. Patterns will emerge. Second, reduce access without announcing a revolution. Not every boundary requires a speech. Answer more slowly. Decline more simply. Shorten what depletes you. Protect one part of the day as uncolonized territory. Morning is ideal, but evening will do. Third, distinguish history from health. A long relationship is not automatically a good one. Duration proves persistence, not value. A bridge may stand for a century and still lead nowhere worth going. Fourth, reward reciprocity. When someone brings calm, honesty, humor, steadiness, or genuine care, notice it. Invest there. Not with grand promises, with presence. Depth belongs where trust has earned it. Fifth, build a life that does not panic in silence. Read, walk, pray if that is your language. Write by hand. Sit in a garden. Make tea slowly. Relearn activities that do not require applause. A person who can rest in solitude is far harder to manipulate through social guilt. And tonight, do one small thing. Cancel one unnecessary obligation. Just one. Not cruelly, clearly. Then sit with the discomfort that follows. You may discover the discomfort is not guilt at all. It is withdrawal from an old habit. The habit of making yourself available before making yourself whole. Now let us close the loop we opened at the beginning. Why avoid people? Not because people are worthless, because indiscriminate access is costly, because time becomes precious, because trust becomes earned, because noise becomes intolerable, because solitude reveals itself not as punishment, but as medicine. Because being useful to everyone can become a quiet form of self-erasure. Because the second half of life invites a different economy, one in which attention is guarded, presence is intentional, affection is sincere, and access is granted to those who know how to hold it with respect. That is not decline. That is sovereignty. The world may call it withdrawal. Let it. Empires in decay always mock restraint, because restraint exposes excess. Crowds always mistrust selectivity, because selectivity cannot be easily managed. But modern noise is temporary. Human truth is older than the market, older than the feed, older than the etiquette of constant availability. And truth, as ever, is hidden under the rubble of exhausted habits. If your circle has grown smaller, Perhaps your sight has grown clearer. If your door opens less often, perhaps your inner house has finally become worth protecting. If you no longer wish to spend your final decades proving your niceness to people who confuse access with love, that is not a moral failure. It may be wisdom, arriving without apology. Choose depth over traffic. Choose peace over performance. Choose the few who leave your spirit steadier than they found it. The rest is noise, and noise, however fashionable, has never been a home. Tell me in the comments, when did you first realize that protecting your peace was not selfish, but necessary? Modern noise is fleeting, but the laws of human dignity endure.